All right, this video comes to us from LiussDBD. This time doing DBD's darkest theories. Remember that link that just showed up in the Twitch chat that is there for you to like and subscribe to this creator. If you're on YouTube, it'll be in the description below because you're a jerk if you don't support them. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Dead by Daylight has a bunch of lore with a bunch of mysteries. That means it's up to us to try to fill in those gaps with theories. For this video, I've tried to avoid some of the more well-known ones and scoured online, mainly the DBD subreddit, for this list. So big shout out to them for helping me get started on a lot of these. So here's a list of the darkest Dead by Daylight theories, with the last theory having some major implications when it comes to the entity and a certain killer and perhaps the fate of the DBD universe as a whole.
Okay.
Dwight is the entity's favorite to toy with. This theory comes from the fact that Dwight is really easy to scare. He was already a nervous, anxious person back home, so that's just amplified when he's running for his life here. The thing that the entity really likes though is his will to overcome. He's quite literally a natural survivor. It's what he knows how to do. Per the lore, Dwight clasped to his rat race life. Dwight won't stop. He'll survive no matter what. As seen with his perks, that also helps him guide others through the trials. This combination of being a nervous leader is perfect for the entity since he could get a whole meal out of those feelings inside of him and the feelings of hope that he inspires. No other survivor can hit the spot for the entity in the exact same way Dwight can. General perks come from voided survivors.
I like this one. I've heard this one. It's really cool. Really cool.
The entity throws in survivors that have lost all their hope and soul, rendering them useless to it. This theory strings together some themes that a few of the general survivor perks share. Kindred, Dark Sense, and Deja Vu have a similar eye icon, and they all revolve around some sort of aura reading ability. These three could come from a survivor with special abilities, like Michaela and her perks. Will Make It, No One Left Behind, and Hope are altruistic perks that could have been from a leader.
I love this theory so much.
On top of that, the perks work really well with each other. Hope and
I just think it's so complex and interesting, the idea that like there are survivors we've never met that the entity has just like fully devoured. That like existed at one point. And we just never got to see them. And we just could potentially just have remnants of their general perks just about, right? I just think that's wild. I think that's interesting. And it's cool on the flip side on Killer 2. Where did Sloppy come from? Was there a pig killer? What about Shattered Hope? Where did those come from? Were there killers that like refused to listen to the entity and the entity just chop? You know, murdered them? Like that's crazy. I think that's really cool. It's really cool.
No One Left Behind have the same activation requirement, the exit gate opening. No One Left Behind also pairs nicely with Will Make It, due to them greatly benefiting unhooked survivors. Premonition, Spine Chill, and
but if killers are don't listen, he had to beat them into submission, which he had to do with Trapper, which is why Trapper has the iron in him. What happens if like Trapper had somehow fought through that torture and just like refused to listen? Does he not just murder the guy and throw him out into the trash? Keep the perks though.
Wait could belong to a stealthy survivor that was capable of knowing where the killer is and how to avoid them. Slippery Meat, Resilience, and This Is Not Happening could have come from someone that's really tough and really tries to push through the worst of the scenarios they could go through. With this theory, it implies that the entity can create perks but not destroy them. Or maybe the perks are kept around because they're still useful even if their respective survivors have been voided. A piece of evidence for all this comes from a really surprising event. After the Stranger Things license was pulled, all of those perks became general perks. That's a really concrete precedent for this theory. The fact that we saw it happen in real time means it could have happened before. Spirit's father derailed Adam's train. Adam Francis is a pretty smart dude. So smart, in fact, that he went overseas to teach in Japan. Unfortunately for him, that all came to a stop when a train he was taking derailed and flipped upside down. Right before he was about to meet his end, Adam was taken into the entity's realm. In another part of Japan, soon after, Spirit's father gets laid off from his job after 20 years of working there. Leading up to his termination, the family was taking financial hits with Rin's education and his sick wife's medical bills. So he started working harder and harder, enduring double shifts to hopefully get a promotion. During this time, he didn't sleep well to the point that he was hearing voices. He was wearing himself out. Finally, he met with his boss to basically beg for any sort of additional compensation for his work. He was so desperate that he would have been okay with just taking time off. However, the timing couldn't have been worse. According to the lore, the company had launched a defective production line that was costing them dearly. Someone had to be held accountable, and Rin's father fitted the bill perfectly. It's theorized that the company
this is
that he works
interesting.
for manufactures parts that Japan's transit system uses. He was so focused on working towards that promotion that he lost too much sleep, and thus wasn't able to do his job adequately.
that is
He is
interesting.
the
I like
one
this
that's
one.
responsible for sending out the same defective parts that Adam's train used, resulting in its derailment that presumably cost the lives of many.
Intriguing.
Oni
I
is
like
being
that one.
tortured. Oni would probably kill me for calling him an Oni. He absolutely hated that nickname, which is an ogre-like demon in Japanese folklore. He was branded with this name due to his sheer strength that aided in his brutal killings. In the lore, he even struck down his own father because he was on his way to kill a lord that had called him that. When Oni found out it was his father, he closed his eyes and screamed in agony until he could scream no more. He eventually did get around to killing that lord, only to then be overpowered by that lord's townspeople. That's when, on the brink of death, the entity took him and made him into an actual Oni. A reason for this could be so that he stays angry because he's really now what he hated being called, causing him to be more violent than he would have ever been. Aside from the trials, the entity uses that to its advantage by using him for other stuff. Whenever Oni shows up in the lore, it's pretty much always to attack someone. He attacked Talbot Grimes, Blight, when he was trying to do his research. Oni is also the one that chased Rebecca into the entity's realm. Being used as a tool, as the type of monster he despised, only increases his hatred and bloodlust, which at the end of the day benefits the entity all the more. Charlotte and Victor share a soul. In the lore, Victor died years before the entity
soul?
took Charlotte. She had to carry on with his corpse still attached to her. Despite it oozing and blackening, his body never really fully decomposed. It became Charlotte's mission to protect him even in death, since he was the only family she had left. It was that dedication that put her on the entity's radar. It reanimated Victor by turning his corpse into a monstrous approximation of him. This theory claims that even though the entity could do that, it can't give Victor true free will since he was already dead. He didn't have a soul. So the next best thing would be to split Charlotte's soul for both, but not fully at the same time.
That's
this
why,
is the
and
reason why only one of them can be active while the other just...
That's smart as hell. That explains that. That's just canon. You can't tell me. I accept that fully as canon. That makes complete sense. That makes complete and total sense. That is canon, and you cannot convince me otherwise. That makes complete and total sense. I love this. I will accept no other truth.
stands around.
What is? So, like, Victor's died. Victor died. And when he pulls Charlotte in, or the entity pulls Charlotte into the realm, you know, the entity reanimates Victor. That's like a, hey, you kill for me and you get your brother back. So that's why Charlotte kills. But the idea is that the reason that only one can be awakened at a time is that the entity didn't just bring Victor back to life, but split Charlotte's soul in two, so that she could only, like, she is essentially they're the same thing. Like they share the same soul, so only one person can be active at a time. Only one person can get control, which is just. Ooh.
That idle one is
Very
still
cool.
able to move in place. Even their Mori backs this idea up. Once Victor is out of her, Charlotte just kind of stands there until he comes back. This sort of rule is even supported in the lore a bit. When Victor got brought back to life, before she could react, he spilled from her in a bloody puddle, landing in the snow and running, pulling herself from the edge of death. She gave chase, until finally, within her view, was Victor. Sitting at the edge of a thick fog, a dark hooded figure emerged from the fog, grabbed his arm, and seized him. This can be inferred as the entity bringing back
Biased him.
Victor, using Charlotte's soul for a moment to jumpstart him and let his primal instincts to run kick in before the soul is brought back to Charlotte for her to go after him. The reason the entity had someone grab Victor and pull him into the realm is so that Charlotte's protective nature would take over. She would then be prepared to eviscerate any who set foot near her brother. That's also why he had the person appear as a black hooded figure, the same type that had been chasing after them for a long time. She's angry and vengeful, so when she reunites with Victor, everyone around them becomes an enemy they have to take out. Quentin's body is still on Earth. When Freddy came to take care of him,
this sounds
Quentin
spicy.
researched and trained his mind to have more control over his dreams. After many nights of Freddy taunting him from a distance, he finally attacked Quentin in a dream. He fought back, but during that, him and Freddy were taken. However, there are implications in that lore passage when that happens. Quentin's vision was obscured with rolling tendrils of fog, and when it cleared, he was somewhere else. In another dream? If so, it wasn't his. It felt cold and unfamiliar. He realized he was by a campfire. The transition between his dream and him ending up in the entity's realm was very quick and seamless, as if it happened.
Yeah, so Quentin's
right
in a
there
coma
that
in his
moment.
actual
A
universe?
reminder that during that passage, Quentin was still asleep. That gives weight to this theory that because he was taken in the dream world, his soul was actually what was taken, while his physical body was still back home and most likely
messed up.
left in a coma-like state.
That's messed up. I like that.
THALITA is delusional. Renato and THALITA accidentally stumble
That's
upon
true.
one of Skull Merchant's kills, where they witness a blood-soaked man get cut in half, during which Renato's arm got scratched from the strike. This obviously would be very traumatic for anyone, but it may have been too much for THALITA. At the end of both of their lore entries, a beach is brought up. In THALITA's point of view, it says that the factory was changing, its dark and dingy walls dissolving to a bright and sunny landscape. A beach.
Okay, maybe she
found
is.
her resolve. A
Maybe
way
she
out,
is.
a chance to survive. They ran along the beach, leaving the hunter behind, kicking up warm sand with each stride. THALITA never stopped running, not even when the sand turned into a swirling black fog. It's not exactly far-fetched for a sudden change in scenery to be possible in the entity's
But it
realm,
is sus.
but Renato's entry tells a different story. She was pulling Renato to his feet, telling him to run. Run where? She said something about a beach. He couldn't see any beach. All he could see was black fog closing in on them. This
Wait a minute. Wait. Back it up. Wait. Whoa. Keep going.
theory claims that right after they were chased into the entity's realm, THALITA's mind started to slip in a way for her brain to cope with what she just saw, especially since they were running for
That's
their
wild.
lives. She sees a beach and a nice day, and that's why you see her smile so much. For
That's funny. That's funny. I like that. I like that one. She's just going through it. She's just everything is fine. We're on a beach. Hey, THALITA, I'm on the beach right now. I will answer the phone later. Wow.
For her, going up against a killer is like she's playing hide and seek or tag. Working on a generator is just repairing a kite. This is how she processes what's going on in order for her to survive.
That's
Michaela
interesting.
killed her dad. In the DBD universe, magic seems to always
I thought that one was wild, and then it opened with, and Michaela killed her dad. Huh? Wait.
always come at some sort of cost. Take for example, in Lisa Sherwood, Hag's lore, after she was caught scratching a symbol in her textbook for good luck, her grandmother warns her to not play with powers you don't understand. Her grandmother had texts full of those types of symbols, but Hag just thought it was all superstition. That is, until she started getting better marks at school. Her friend Pam takes notice of this
Yeah,
and
fuck you,
starts
Pam.
using those symbols more. One of those symbols was utilized to help her avoid an English
Gosh.
test from a teacher she disliked. That help came in the form of the teacher's sudden death. She was delighted about it. At the funeral, the pallbearers had trouble keeping the coffin upright due to the teacher being overweight, something that Pam often gleefully made fun of him for. During this struggle, one of the pallbearers trips, causing the coffin to fling forward right on top of Pam. This was a direct result of her disrespect of those magic symbols. Going back to Michaela's story, although we don't know the exact details of her father's death, this theory claims that because of her interest in the supernatural and dark arts, she went in headfirst studying them, developing her abilities. As any kid would go about discovering their newfound superpowers, she doesn't stop to consider the consequences. As she used her magic more and more, the cost for it built up and the payment turned out to unfortunately be her own father. This would explain why she's not only the one survivor we know that has these abilities, but also why she's able to use that same magic so freely, even in the entity's realm. It may have also been what caught the entity's attention in the first place, for it to stalk her and make multiple attempts to bring her into its realm. The Dredge is a new entity.
I've heard this one,
Dredge
actually.
is the first killer we got that's a true monster, not human nor beast. An amalgamation of body parts originating from our most primal fears. This is exactly why this theory tries to make this connection between the Dredge and the entity. They both share some physical similarities, namely the dark fog surrounding them and their spider claw-like appendages. They're also able to be anywhere at any given time, although obviously Dredge's ability to do this is far weaker than the entity's. Furthermore, it's heavily implied in the lore that Dredge was created on purpose. It came from eating up the frightened and paranoid cult members.
Yeah, that would add a lot of context to that lore of like maybe they were trying to create something like an entity like figure
led by Otto Stamper,
on
who
purpose.
belonged to a group that worships the entity. Otto watched the creature as it slowly began to manifest into the very thing he had imagined, the very thing he had made them all imagine. It turned slowly to look at Otto for a long silent moment before leaving into the shadows. Once again, the Dredge was made on purpose. Perhaps it's for the entity to have a student. Maybe it's teaching Dredge how
That's
to
pretty
properly
cool.
feast on emotions. That's how it came into being after all. However, it's gluttonous and still eats physical bodies rather than focusing on squeezing those emotions out. Dredge's Mori is one out of 2 killers that doesn't outright kill a survivor, the other one being Pinhead, an incredibly powerful being in his own right. Dredge is also the only killer to fully consume a survivor. The body is taken to be a part of itself, just like how it was created. But its body doesn't physically change when this happens, so the survivor has to be going somewhere, right? It's possible that deep inside of the Dredge itself is a pocket dimension, since the entity is capable
That's
of
kinda
creating
scary.
those as well.
I don't
All of
like that.
is why Dredge is
It's
in the
cool,
trials as a
but it's
killer
scary.
to learn. It's honing its abilities, and we see that in the game. It uses survivors' sufferings as fuel to charge its Nightfall power. Why is this though? What's the entity's plan? There's another theory out there that can sort of tie into this, that the entity is among the weaker of its kind. We know from the lore that the entity is ancient and that there are others like it. This theory claims that the others are just much stronger. That's why the entity set up the trials in the first place, so it could become more powerful than them in order to have that top spot. The reason it created Dredge and took it under its wing is so that Dredge could one day become a powerful ally. Or maybe something more like a weapon, since Dredge doesn't seem to have any motivations or thoughts of its own. It acts on pure instinct and is innately drawn to fear and darkness. The Dredge is the key towards the entity's ambitions of universal dominance, and we're helping make that happen every single time we hide in a bush during Dredge's Nightfall.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I like that. I like that. Somebody brought up that theory before, but they hadn't gone into that like level of like, they haven't been that deep about it. Yeah, they didn't be that deep about it. But now that I hear that, that's cool. Like I like the entity is trying to essentially like build another one, but this one it will serve it. That's interesting. That's really cool. I like these. I like these. I appreciate so much that they went out of their way to get ones that aren't obvious. Like if I did, like I like the white eye theory, but if I had to hear that another time, I'd be like, oh wow, really? The white eye theory? These people aren't necessarily evil, and they're being brainwashed or they're mind controlled. If I had to hear that again, I probably would not have happy camper. So I like that a lot of these were very original, and a lot of these were. I like that the LiussDBD one. That one got me off guard. I was like, huh? And then they explained it. I was like, oh no, they're right. Yeah, the Charlotte and the Victor Chair Soul one was amazing, absolutely amazing. White eye theory, color white eye theory. The essentially the shorthand it, because once again I've heard it way too much, is that a lot of characters in Dead by Daylight have white eyes, and that's not something that every character shares. And somebody pointed out that they're almost always, or not almost always, but they seem to mostly be on the characters that are, you know, were good-willed and good people in their lore before they became killers. And the idea is that, like, okay, well, maybe they're not doing it willingly. Maybe the reason the spirit has the white eyes is because in front of her, the entity is making her fight against her father, who was coming after her and trying to kill her, or Wraith fighting against his boss, who is, you know, killing all those people, and he's just in a nightmare, essentially seeing that, or Deathslinger. You know, like, they're essentially not willingly hurting innocents, but like they're in essentially a trance where they believe they're hurting somebody who, you know, they would be morally in the right to hurt. You know? So, yeah. That's the White Eye theory. But yeah, these are really cool, and I like a lot of these. Like the Charlotte one is just canon. The twins one is just canon, and I will not be accepting anything else as a result. So yeah.